Hello guys, welcome to a special debate here on Radio Tekkers where we are going to be discussing whether NXT has failed.
Yes, indeed. Do you want music? Is that what you're waiting for?
Yes, guys. So NXT, has it failed? And perfect timing. Our second illustrious guest, just before we get to the introductions. Essentially, there's a lot of rumor and innuendo about the future of NXT. Lots of kind of inner wranglings in the company, and myself and Ray had a conversation recently about whether we thought that NXT had failed in its original premise of providing fresh talent for the main roster. And after we did that recording, we felt that there were more opinions out there that maybe wasn't as well aligned with ours. So we decided to stretch this out a little bit. It originally was meant to just be kind of like a Twitter conversation, but with the amazing opinions of Tanner and the Queen of NE, we felt that this needed to be aired. So before we get into the conversation, let's go around the table and let's do some introductions. So, Tanner, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Stream good. Content good. Ready to have a good debate over some NXT and some wrestling. I'm excited.
Mm-hmm. And one of our favorite people getting back into the content creation game, literally today dropped her comeback episode of the Queen and Pops experience, and it is outstanding. The Queen of NE, look at this, just the praise. How are you?
Thank you,
Queen Mama?
Hi everyone. I missed your faces. It's so nice to see you. I feel like I've come back from a journey, and here I am. It's the best journey, though. Having a baby is the best. Highly recommend.
It absolutely is. And my brother from another mother, the yin to my yang, the person who dragged me kicking and screaming into this content creation world, Mr. Ray Cash. Thanks for turning up.
I regret it every day. Trust me.
Oh, jeez.
So it's your fault.
So you're the one.
I apologize on behalf of the world. No, it's good to be on. It's good to actually get a chance to work with you guys because I've followed y'all forever. I've watched Radio Tekkers a million times. I've listened to your stuff a bunch, Queen. It's good to really kind of get a chance to kind of work with you guys. So thank you, Max.
Max brings us all together, doesn't he?
No, I mean, and the passion we have for wrestling brings us all together. I mean, way before I was even into the content creation game, I had a passion for wrestling, as we all did, and that passion was very much reignited with NXT. We all, in different kind of timelines, have all taken NXT to our hearts and really enjoyed the content that they put out. And it's saddening to hear these rumours of the power struggles within NXT and whether it's essentially failed in its original premise. So what I wanted to do first is get people's first experiences with NXT. How did you get into the product, and how have you gone along on that NXT journey? So I'll start with you, Ray. Essentially an OG, a day one-ish. Let us know about your kind of NXT experiences.
So I was a big proponent of the original NXT game show. I remember being brought in by the dynamic of Daniel Bryan being a rookie and The Miz being his pro. And so from then on, I always kept an eye on that aspect of it because I always enjoy development and new talent and people I've never heard of before. And at the time, I was very much a WWE is the only company that matters, and if you did have something on the Indies, you were a nobody. Like I hated Daniel Bryan because his fans said he was the best in the world and he never wrestled a match in WWE. Now, years later, I can tell you how stupid I was. I can openly admit, but I remember the kind of building of the Performance Center, the transitioning from FCW-esque to NXT proper, and I remember the shows were originally on just Hulu, and I would catch them every Wednesday on Hulu, and I would people like Seth Rollins, you got a chance to see people like Big E, Bo Dallas, who at the time was a horrible babyface that became one of the best heels I've seen in the past 15 years, right? And so many of the newer group of people, but more than anything, it was different than main roster WWE because they actually had a chance to tell stories in a different manner. They actually had a chance to kind of do squash matches in the way the squash matches, I guess, I'm not in the business, but I would think would be the way they were created to be, to build further up and further up and further up. And you finally got a chance to see women taken seriously, which is something that we had never seen in a major capacity with the exception of like 2 or 3 women. So yeah, from day one, the very first episode, I believe Jim Ross came down, Dusty came out as the general manager or whatever you call him. Regal may have been on commentary. Cassius Ono was there. Like it was just Richie Steamboat, so many people that just, I look back now and just miss because you don't see them much anymore. But I've been hooked from that moment on. And then they started hiring like actually named people like Steen and Generico and Pac and all these people and become who we know them to be now. And I've been hooked since then. So like, I'm not one of these people that got into it because of takeovers. Like takeover was kind of like an icing on the cake and like a strawberry on top for me, or a cherry on top rather.
Yeah. So Queen, what are your early memories of NXT?
Yeah, so it's weird. I gave up on wrestling for a while. And I would tune in for Mania always, and SummerSlam and Rumble. And that was kind of about it for a pretty long time. And when I saw stuff rumbling around about this NXT, I wasn't really in at the beginning, which I'm sad to say, because I feel like I would have, thinking about it now, I'm sad that I wasn't as like gung-ho about it at the beginning. But I think once they had that first kind of takeover event, which isn't really even a takeover, right? It's like their first major pay-per-view style. I realized something that I'd been missing in wrestling, which was wrestling. Does that sound weird? WWE was changing at that time, and I had a hard time with it. But once I saw what was happening in NXT, the actual wrestling that was being put on, I was like, oh shit. Like I want this. This is what I've been looking for and what I went to the indies for in the first place. Much like you, Ray, like I was a WWE girl pretty much my whole life until kind of like 2009 time period when I kind of gave up for a while. And I went to the indies and I was hungry for that feeling, and NXT put it on a platter for me. And I was like, okay, like you got me now. And ever since then, it's been something I have adored. And I really love what you said, Ray, about putting on a showcase for women for the first time, like the 4 horsewomen of WWE NXT. Like that's where it happens. And
before that, Paige and Emma.
Even before that,
Marie.
You're right.
Yeah,
you're right. But for me at that time period, that's what I saw. And I didn't see that earlier stuff. And I'm bummed. I saw it later, obviously, because I went back and watched everything. But that moment for me was like, oh, hell yes. No more bra and panties. I'm here. Like, let's go. I've always wanted women to be taken more seriously in this company. And boom, there's NXT. And it makes me sad to see what's on Tuesdays on USA now in some ways.
Mm-hmm. Tanner, tell us your kind of early memories of being part of the NXT fandom?
So my NXT story is not really that much different from Ray or Queen. I mean, I think that being a wrestling fan in that period of time was, oh, you're watching WWE because that's the product to watch, in terms of its immediacy, right? But yeah, there was definitely, you could go and watch Ring of Honor, you could go watch New Japan, you could there were other companies that you could go and see, but WWE was by far the big time at that point in history. I feel like I did miss quite a bit of the early stuff. I do recall the NXT The Game Show, as Ray had mentioned, and obviously characters like Seth Rollins and Big E, and you hear about the Women's Revolution, as Queen brought up earlier. You hear about these rumblings of, oh, this is what's going on in NXT, and this is really cool. I feel like the one moment that really kind of stands out in mind is I was at my apartment. My wife and I had just gotten married, and there was this pay-per-view that was going on WWE Network, and the opening match was Jushin Thunder Liger versus Tyler Breeze, and I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. Jushin Thunder Liger in WWE. I gotta see what's going on, and it was a great show, and it had me hooked ever since. So I've been a dedicated NXT fan since that era with Finn Balor and Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn and everybody else that was around at that time, and to see it progress through the eras that we've had with Nakamura, and then with the Gargano and Ciampa era, and so on. So yeah, I mean that's where my NXT fandom comes from.
Yeah, so it's actually ironic that, being the oldest person on this panel, I'm actually the technically the youngest NXT fan, because as I've made it well known, I was out of wrestling for a decade, and I was dragged back in with New Japan in about 2016. So I missed all of the game show stuff, a lot of the Neville, Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens stuff. My first real memories of NXT is the Shinsuke Nakamura era. So I think in a way I've been kind of blessed that I haven't seen the genesis from it being a brand to make main roster stars. I've actually seen big stars on the brand from day one. So perhaps my kind of outlook on it is going to be a little bit skewed, because this was when it was in the kind of like third brand stage almost of NXT, or at least getting towards becoming that kind of third brand, the indie version of WWE, I suppose. So going back to when it was meant to be a developmental kind of system for main roster, the question is, has that failed? Has that failed as a premise? How did it work in the early days? Again, I'm going to throw it to Ray, with having the most experience with NXT. In those early days of NXT, did it live up to its allotted premise of providing wrestlers for the main roster?
Oh, absolutely. So from the very beginning, and I'm speaking strictly on once it became a television show, and once FCW ceased and everything moved to the Performance Center and so on and so forth, it absolutely was. The entire premise of NXT was to bring people who were on the fringes of the main roster, who needed kind of retuning. Cesaro comes to mind, Jinder Mahal, right? At the very beginning, before he was released, Drew McIntyre was down there. Alicia Fox, from the women's perspective, and Summer Rae. And the new people, getting them camera ready. Because the one thing that WWE does, or most people in the indies, let me not just say WWE, because they're the main company, but we've had other television-facing companies. But the hardest thing that people that are coming from indie perspectives don't understand is where the hard cam is kind of playing to the camera, because as you know, it depends. If you're an indie wrestler, you play to the crowd. If you're a WWE wrestler, you play to the camera, because most of the people are watching at home. And that was a big part of NXT was getting these people ready. Seth Rollins was ready to go to the main roster from day one. And if you believe what he said in some of the rumors, he let Triple H know that very regularly. Why am I here? But there was that growth period. So it absolutely was doing what it was supposed to do. Even going to when they started hiring new people. The I think kind of the big linchpin moment of NXT which kind of let people know they're here is when they signed in a span of months Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, Kenta aka Hideo Itami, Finn Balor, and Neville. Because there's this one very, very famous picture of all 5 of them and Triple H almost in a flying V-esque formation, kind of saying, hey, we're here now. The Indies are coming to WWE, because those were the guys. Queen, you said you were watching the Indies at that time.
That's right.
Those were the kings of the Indies.
Sure were.
And they treated them as they should be treated. Neville did a bid and moved up. Kevin Owens did a few months and moved up. Finn Balor did a few months. I think he did longer because he was the champ. But, most of the people did their time and moved up. That was the plan. Big E moved up quick. Bo Dallas was put in the Royal Rumble before he ever moved up. That was the goal. It wasn't until they started getting so much critical acclaim to where there was kind of a calling, an outcry to bring it to other cities where they realized we can make some money off of this. Mm-hmm. While TakeOver Brooklyn is maybe the greatest night in the history of NXT, it's probably the worst thing ever happened to them, because that's when they realized we can make money off of this. And that's when I think the ideology changed from hiring people specifically for developing them for the main roster and building a third brand. And I think that's like the moment when you can realize, yeah, this is different now.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned some of the huge stars that had stints in NXT and then went on to do pretty big things on the main roster. But you're looking at the likes of Finn Balor, first Universal Champion. Kevin Owens is a huge star. Seth Rollins is one of the most bulletproof wrestlers on the main roster, especially in this era of everybody's name being on the chopping block. The likes of Samoa Joe went up and kind of started with the how would you put it as a flop, perhaps? Where do you think, and I'm going to throw this to Queen, where do you think the kind of wheels started coming off? NXT being the developmental brand and stars being primed for big roles on main roster, and then we see flop after flop after flop of NXT stars just not hitting on main roster.
I'm going to say it's after the women. I'm going to be honest. Once those 4 went up, that was it. And I also agree a lot with Ray that TakeOver Brooklyn sparked a light. And here is where the fork in the road starts of the question that you posed on Twitter. Is it a failure? Yes and no is both of the answer. But I will tell you that what I think is their ideology, brand 3, new talent development. It went like this when it needed to go like this. Mm-hmm. If that's what they wanted to do with NXT, right? If they wanted to keep it this lane of developing new talent to push to their other 2 brands, then that didn't work out the way that they had thought, I guess, which is why what I said to your answer on Twitter, I said, I think really what it needs is a redefinition. What is NXT now? It's not really what's next, because you branded it now as your third brand. And in a lot of cases, it can be better than the other 2 in terms of what's happening story-wise, star power in a lot of ways, because things are hitting in NXT and have been over the past couple of years that aren't hitting in the other 2. But in the same token, if you're thinking about, right, big stars on the stage, you have the ladies. All 4 of those ladies in their own right, superstars. After that, what do we have? We have people who made impacts, but I'm going to say they were more impactful in NXT than they ever were elsewhere. Andrade, for example. Bo Dallas, another one. How dope was Bo Dallas in NXT? So dope. Then he comes to the main roster, and it's just like, what do we do with this guy? Andrade, same problem. Aleister Black, same problem. It's issues. And to me, I feel like Finn could have done so much more if he didn't get hurt. But he got hurt, and he had to drop that belt. And that, for me, was the last real opportunity of a true NXT-born star. Finn's a star in his own right from other things. But if you're looking at NXT and going right to Raw and SmackDown, and he wins the Universal title, and then he's hurt and he drops it. That was the last, for me at least, real opportunity for an NXT superstar to be huge. Because they dropped the ball on Finn so hard. And I mean, look, he got hurt. Shit happens. We got to move on with the story. Okay, cool. But they could have brought him back and done so many other things that they didn't do. He ended up being better returning to NXT than he was in the other places. And that should speak volumes for itself as to the issues that they're having with NXT. Is it a third brand? Is it your developmental? They need to separate that at this point. I think we're kind of way too far gone on the brand part for the developmental.
So that, for me, opens up another question, and I'll throw it to Tanner first, but I definitely want all your opinions on it. Was this always destined to happen? When you are you're bringing in all these indie darlings, you're attracting all these new eyes from fans who were not particularly interested in the main roster and the kind of sanitized WWE way of producing, but you're bringing in the likes of Finn Balor, you're bringing in Shinsuke Nakamura, you're bringing in Samoa Joe, all these big names in different scenes. Was it always destined to be a breakaway and come away from that feeding for the main roster and become its own entity?
Well, and that's the $64,000 question, right? Like that's the ultimate thing is like, what was the ultimate vision of NXT? Was it supposed to always be developmental, or, I mean, once they've found that there's actual money to be made in trying to make the stars of tomorrow happen, right? Like, you know, did they change course? I mean, that's obviously why we're here having this debate, right? I agree with a lot of what Queen says. I disagree with some of it in that they've made stars. NXT's made people who have major star potential. I mean, I can look back at Shinsuke Nakamura, for example, and point to him being making his debut. Was it right before Backlash? And when he made his debut, he had the fans at the SmackDown just like singing along with his song. He went on to win the Royal Rumble. He went on to take on AJ Styles for the championship. You know,
kicking in the dick about 45,000 times.
And that's where I start to have a problem. Is that it's a noticeable pattern that once somebody comes up from NXT, it's no longer about what did you do in NXT and you making an impact in WWE in the same way that you made an impact in NXT. It's now like, oh, well, you're here, and so we're going to make you what we want to make you. I mean, forget what you did in NXT. That doesn't matter anymore. It's like it's just like, forget about what you did on the independent circuit, or forget about what you did in Japan or Mexico, whatever. You're here now. This is the big time. This is where the big boys play. So we want you to do what we want you to do, and that's going to be, hey, I need you to do this quick job match to Brock Lesnar in Saudi Arabia, or I'm going to need you to do, you know, whatever it might be. I feel like there is not, and I talked about this on Headlock Talk previously years ago, but there's not that, there's not anybody to shuttle or to properly like bed in people from NXT. It feels like Triple H is supposed to be responsible for that, but there's nobody to really chauffeur talent and be like, hey, listen, you know, this is what the main roster is like, and these are things that we can get you used to and whatever. But in the same inverse, there's nobody who will be there to like stick up for them. Triple H could be that guy, but he's busy running NXT. There's nobody who can be the voice of the people being brought up to say, hey, you should probably really think about what you're doing with this character, or think about what you're doing with this talent. That's not really the best, most efficient way to do it, and that's not how we got the most out of him here in NXT. Why don't you try it this way? But ultimately, who's got the pencil at the end of the day? It's Vince McMahon.
Can I jump in real quick? Because there's one thing you said
absolutely.
that Tanner, that I disagree with, but I think it's a good discussion, because there's always a lot of rhetoric between why these people don't work on the main roster.
Okay.
And I absolutely understand from a fan's perspective that if this worked in NXT, then it's got to work on main roster, right? But history has shown us that the same people don't watch the same things.
That's true.
So, and I'll give you a perfect example of why NXT actually fails people, I think, more than it helps them because of the kind of the process of how it works and how people attach to what they do so much. Bayley is a perfect example of why NXT failed Bayley, as far as I'm concerned, and I'll explain why. Because her 2-year run on NXT was one of the greatest character arcs that we've ever seen in the history of professional wrestling. I'll go that far. From being almost essentially like a female Eugene-esque character, go back and watch original Bayley. I was really terrified they were going to go that route with it. To being just the fangirl who doesn't even think she should be there, to making friends with everybody and everybody turning on her, to kind of growing her own gumption and belief in herself, to losing everybody and then getting her wins back, and to finally beating Sasha. It is a beautiful arc. And then she goes to NXT. She goes to the main roster, and because what she's done in NXT, it's expected that she's going to pop up on NXT on main roster, and boom, everybody knows that. No, they don't.
Well, she did have quite the arrival. She did make quite the debut and was really hot at the beginning of WWE.
Sure,
in her WWE run. But over time, you did see that regression, I think.
Well, one thing we know about, all four of us know about wrestling fans in general, is any surprise is going to pop the crowd.
Yeah.
And so when she came out, that was a legit surprise. So any surprise is going to pop the crowd. But let's go another guy. This is an NXT guy, but AJ, when he debuted on the Royal Rumble, had a huge pop. And then the next night on Raw, it was kind of like, oh, hey, he's here. Which is why they took a minute to kind of reintroduce him to the crowd. Now, I would have liked for them to have done with AJ what they did with Bayley, but from Vince's perspective, I'm not saying it's right or wrong or indifferent, it makes more sense to explain a guy who's never been here. Then I shouldn't have to explain Bayley to the same crowd, because clearly if she's selling out 12,000 seat arenas, y'all should know who she is. But the crowd didn't. And it took a while to re-ingratiate her and to rebuild her. And I think while that always, of course, everything falls at the litmus and at the feet of Vince McMahon, absolutely. But NXT, that wasn't developmental, because she became so big based off of a story that could never be told anywhere else. So to not have the forethought to say, well, how can we make this and streamline this and explain this character to the major crowd? I'll give you one more example, and because I don't want to take up all the time. Emma is another example. Now, you guys wouldn't watch when Emma debuted. When Emma first started, everybody couldn't stand her because they were like, what is this stupid ass dance? But we realized she could wrestle. She could wrestle.
Yeah. And
when we saw her wrestle, we were like, well, okay, it's a little endearing. And then it got to the point where it's like listening to I don't know, a song in like the mid 2000s. It's stuck in your head all day long, because everybody was doing that stupid little dance, but it only worked because it got built up over time that she could wrestle, and she was actually endearing, and it wasn't just some stupid quirk. And then she goes to the main roster, and again, I'm not saying that they have the best debuts, not at all, but it didn't work because nobody understood why she did the dance. And so I think that's partially Vince's fault for not having the synergy enough to grow that. But also, if your job in NXT is to build these guys for the main roster, then that should be something they're prepared for. Xavier Woods stealing Brodus Clay's exact gimmick when he debuted. It took the New Day to save him. He thought he was getting fired. And so, like, these are all failures on both parts. But NXT, we have to admit, didn't do their job with these particular people. Now, that's not everybody.
But what was their job? Supposedly supposed to make them ready for the main roster, then the main roster didn't even want them.
Yeah.
That's how it comes off to me. Okay. Like, you're like, okay, you're going to come to Raw. We're going to completely ignore everything you just did for the past couple of years. We're going to expect people to know you and just, okay, this is Bayley. Boom. There she is. There's no commentary team to help them.
We've seen that happen. We've seen that happen.
Times?
Yeah. I mean, it's happened recently with Dewdrop.
Yeah,
We were
I
expected
just
to
was going
never
to say that.
remember.
That's a massive failure. That's
Excuse
a massive
me?
failure. Yeah.
She's like, you don't mention anything. And also,
Who
why
is
does that
this
make me
here
want
on
to watch your other?
Raw? What's going on?
Why does that make me want to watch the other shit that you put on? That makes me not give a shit about anything else. If I don't watch NXT, right? If I don't watch NXT UK, which I don't, but let's say I'm an only Raw or SmackDown girl, and that's how you debut. You're supposedly ready to come up to the main roster stars. I don't give a shit. I'll never watch NXT because you just treat it like whatever. So guess what? I'm gonna, as a fan, casual fan, treat it like whatever. Yeah. That's my problem. Yeah, NXT should prepare them for main roster, but what does that mean? And I think that's the problem. That synergy you're talking about, Ray, is missing. They miss each other. Trains in the night. Yeah. Also, who the fuck on commentary isn't doing their job? Sorry, Michael Cole, suck it, because you're not doing the right thing. And the right thing is to say, this is who they are. If you don't want to watch NXT, maybe you should, because this person did blah, 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 blah. List it out. Sell me on why I should watch them on your main roster. That's partly their responsibility, just as it's NXT's responsibility to prepare them for whatever it is. But if they're supposed to be the same character in NXT as they are on the other brands, then why aren't you talking about it? If they're making a completely different character, that's a whole other conversation, right? If they're not coming the same that they were, then that's a different issue. But if I'm supposed to have fear in my heart for Aleister Black being all scary and crazy, you going to tell me about him at all? Or do I just have to go do my own research? Because a casual fan isn't going to do that.
Yeah. No, and I want to actually, I'm not trying to cut you off, Queen, but I agree so much with a lot of what you're saying. And I think that a lot of it too is actually the inverse of what you would expect WWE to do because of what they did well. I mean, one thing that you always hear about Paul Heyman is how much that he put in front of you the things that ECW did well and diminished the things that they did poorly.
Accentuate the positives, hide the negatives. Yes,
exactly, 100%. I mean, with let's take that series of call-ups with Aleister Black, right? When Aleister Black debuted in NXT, he never cut a promo. He came out to the ring, almost marched to the ring, and then threw a black mass, and that was it. He took care of jobbers for months and months, and progressively beat more top-tier talent as he went on. When Aleister Black was debuting in not NXT, but on the main roster for the longest stretch of time, he was cutting promos in a broom closet, dimly lit, and not wrestling. So it's kind of like, what are we doing here? This isn't telling me anything about who Aleister Black is in the ring. Why do I need to care about why he's him cutting this promo? It doesn't mean anything to me. Ricochet, very similar kind of thing, where he showed you in the ring what he was really good at, but then you made him cut a promo, and it really exposed that he can't cut promos as well as most of the other roster, because he doesn't read off of a script like an actor. He's not an actor. He's a wrestler. He's that's not his thing. And then we could talk all day about the Viking experience. And
don't say it.
And how
don't
crazy,
say that.
How crazy that was. I got into a fight with Road Dogg on Twitter that night because he thought it was a great idea, and
I
it's
remember
not.
that.
No one thought.
I actually remember the fight. I remember the fight. I remember it was hilarious because that's one of the fights that made me realize, man, Road Dogg might need to shut the hell up. Yeah.
That was the time that made you think that?
Look, man, I'm a DX fan, dog. I come up in the attitude era. I'm sorry, I rocked the Road Dogg a little too long. If I may retort just on, I can't speak on the Viking Raiders, but just on Aleister and Ricochet, and I want all y'all opinion. Yeah. Can we not say that? Because look, I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying. I want to play devil's advocate real quick.
Oh, for
devil's
sure.
advocate, Aleister Black, interweaving. Okay, never
I see you.
I tried to be clever. Never mind.
No, it was effective. I loved it.
Is that also still not a part of the failure of NXT? Because if you're gonna send them up, they were sent up. Yeah. You should know that they gotta cut promos because the main roster is not built upon wrestling. Like wrestling is the most important part of the main roster. Everybody on that roster can wrestle. Cool. What else can you do? How can you set yourself apart? So
that exposes the issue right there. Yes,
exactly.
It gets back to the original question. Was this always destined to happen? And Queen, I really want your take on this, with you being very New Japan centric and very indie centric. You knew a lot of these wrestlers before they were even the likes of Andrade or Aleister Black. When you were getting into NXT, and a lot of indie fans were getting into NXT, was this always going to happen, that there would be some disconnect between these wrestlers who are big stars on the indies, then being meant to be being primed for main roster WWE? Was there always going to be this disconnect?
I think yes, but not in the way that you might think. I don't think that anybody who wants to be on Raw or SmackDown in WWE knows the drill. You know what you're going to have to do. It's sports entertainment, right? Have emphasis on the entertainment. The wrestling is the sprinkling, especially recently. NXT is not that. So when the indie wrestlers are being recruited, even to this day, like Alex Zane, who was just let go, when you're recruiting folks like that, you're recruiting them for NXT specifically, because that's how it's been designed. And I don't blame the wrestlers who came from the indies, even in the early stages, for that, because that's the culture NXT created. It was the indie version, I think Tanner said it before, of WWE. 100%. That black box vibe. If you've ever been to theater before, you have your main stage performance, all the crazy lights, and you have a black box little theater. That's NXT. That gives you more of a chance to have audience interaction. That feeling that you get only at an indie show, NXT was giving in a prime time, quote unquote, television format. And even still to this day, it has that something. It's not as high as it was before, but it's still there in its design, and at its heart, it's got that grit that the other two just don't have. They're not the same type of feel. I don't know that it was destined for disconnect because of the way NXT became when NXT is now. That split, that's the problem. You're making it into a brand, and you're grooming those wrestlers for NXT specifically. If that's what you're doing, then they should be smart like Adam Cole and Johnny Gargano and Ciampa and never fucking move and stay right there.
And that leads me to something that, and I want to throw this to Ray first, because he really kind of drilled this point home on our chat on Head Trauma. Was the turning point when Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano said, we would rather quit than leave NXT. We would rather quit than go up to main roster. Was that the kind of the death knell of NXT being the developmental brand and it being pushed to being a third brand?
I think there's one particular death knell that definitely hurts, because Queen laid it out perfectly, especially with this fantastic hand thing we're doing.
Two roads diverge in a wood, Robert Frost. I'm just saying.
You're right. There was a fork in the road, and we went completely left when Vince is looking on the road on the right and not seeing anybody. To add to that road on the right, how many people got called up to the main roster and worked? Now, I don't mean become world champions, but like became a regular character that worked, that never wrestled in NXT. Braun Strowman, Elias, you know what I mean? Like these, Omos never even appeared on NXT television.
This is actually a very. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but there's a very interesting dichotomy there in which guys that actually really don't work in NXT for the reasons that people watch NXT actually tend to do very well on the main roster. Guys 100%. Like Braun Strowman, guys like Elias, and I'm wondering what that connection could possibly be.
Oh, I don't know. You know, I don't know. I have no idea. Right? But to the death knell point, so I can pass it back on to my colleagues here. I can't speak to one particular thing, but I know that NXT was a formula, right? Even to the Shinsuke Nakamura years, the formula was new person debuts, new person builds themselves up, they get the title shot, they win the championship, they do a little run, they get called up. You go back to the very beginning. It happened. Bobby Roode, move on up. Shinsuke Nakamura, move on up. Drew McIntyre, move on up. Andrade, move on up. Andrade stayed a little longer because he had to kind of figure his character out. But when he did, move on up. Everybody. So I don't mean to be this guy because I love this dude. But there's a difference than when Takeover Brooklyn, when Drew beats Bobby Roode,
Mm-hmm.
and Adam Cole showed up, and then you're like, well, yeah, Adam Cole ain't never leaving, you know. And then to your point, Gargano and Ciampa had 57 epics in the span of like 3 years, and they ain't never leaving. And like, I don't even know if we want to get into this because that's a whole can of worms, but because I know I disagree with everybody on this topic, so if we want to go there, we can go there. But back against the wall, just swinging, right? But when NXT, however you think they did it, moved or got put against AEW, and the ideology became focus on the brand and the money, right? When they did that, then the thought process was, well, now we got to just keep keep people on the brand and build the brand up, because you can't have a brand without people, you know. So we can't just have this person for a year and a half and call them up. Now they gotta stay. Johnny Gargano been there almost as long as my kid, and my kid starts high school next year. You know, I'm being facetious, but like, you get the point, right?
Yeah, but he slaps. He shouldn't move.
Should he? No.
Nope.
But in Vince's mind, and again, none of this is right or wrong. This is just different perspectives. If I was Vince McMahon, Johnny Gargano getting fired. Because why is he here?
Yeah.
NXT has run on a loss. Run in the red.
Yeah.
Every year until last year, because they got the TV deal. That's just factual. So if Johnny Gargano don't want to come and move up and do what he was signed to do, why is he here? Now that's not Ray talking, but I can understand that thought process, because what am I hiring you for?
Mm-hmm.
If you're just completely gonna, Ciampa's a little different. Ciampa might have to retire. If he has to retire, that's different. Gargano fine. Gargano can rest another 20 years.
And I think that's something that's really beautiful in what you're saying in a weird way about people getting fired, but like, for me, that's
the beauty of being fired.
Thank you for making
Tanner,
that horrible
2021
statement sound good. I appreciate that.
For me, that was the death knell. That's the one of the big nails in the coffin for NXT for me, is the fact that they felt compelled that we have to have something that competes against AEW on Wednesday nights. When you don't, that didn't have to be an option. You brought up that NXT was operating at a loss. Multi-million-dollar companies like WWE and ones larger than WWE lose money hand over fist every day just by hiring employees, right? Like the company I work for loses hundreds of millions of dollars every year just hiring new employees and seeing who works and who doesn't, right? That's just a cost of business. For me, it's like, and we keep going around and around, and I think we all agree to the same point. It's, for NXT, what do you want? Do you want to be a third brand? Do you want to be a brand that caters to, or do you want to be like developmental, or do you want to cater to an audience that you really aren't appealing to with your other products right now, Raw, SmackDown, whatever? That's what NXT did for me, is it catered something to me that did not exist elsewhere in WWE, and that people were getting recruited to. Yet again, Adam Cole, Tommy End, Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens. We talk all day about these people who kept coming in and out of NXT, and I just feel like, you know, it's fine to operate at a loss. Why did you feel the need to go and compete directly and make this war with AEW out of nothing when AEW clearly had all the momentum? You know, that to me is just like the really odd part of this is like you felt compelled to make this business move, and yes, you know you got to be profitable. That's cool, but the instant that you made it profitable and the instant that you made it go onto USA and made it 2 hours, dude, like that's the moment that you lost me.
Queen, your thoughts on? Do you think AEW kind of highlighted some significant weaknesses in that NXT kind of mentality? Did it highlight how NXT didn't have its own identity anymore?
I think it highlighted that many folks, didn't really take AEW seriously and thought that they could rest on the laurels of what they had in NXT. Not to say that the talent in NXT was bad, okay? Because it's not. I love NXT. But for a different type of wrestling fan who is tired of seeing the same old on Mondays, Fridays, used to be Tuesdays, AEW offered that alternative. It's what made WCW and ECW so attractive to such a large percentage of folks.
Mm-hmm.
In that same way. They're different, though some will argue WCW is making a resurgence, but hey, whatever. It works. I think it was the underestimating how hungry wrestling fans were for AEW's product and what the potential was. It also highlighted something that I wish a WWE would take more seriously, is working with other people. AEW's opening that forbidden door and working with New Japan and Ring of Honor and Impact and the indies, like Nick Gage, GCW indies, okay? Hiring those indie folks in that area during the pandemic, that's what it highlighted for me. It highlighted a weakness, not necessarily in NXT, but I'd say in the company in general, making those decisions to keep NXT where it was, to book it for those 2 hours, and it makes a mistake, I think. Not because competition is bad. Competition should be good.
Competition breeds better.
It makes things better. It makes things more interesting. It makes things exciting. I want to see what they're going to say to each other. I want to see, who's going to say what and what shots are going to be taken. It's fun. It's fun. If you don't take it too seriously, it's fun. But by this time, I think it was a combination of what is even NXT anymore, pandemic problems that they didn't take seriously enough, and the general disenfranchisement with wrestling as a whole. I think all of that together created severe issues for WWE's brand of the other two, but more specifically, what are you going to do to make me interested in watching this now? How are you going to handle that? Now, I can say they've done really cool storylines and things that are happening with NXT. They have some great signings. The women's division alone is worth watching NXT for. It's beautiful. It's knocks AEW out of the park 10 times. No offense, Britt Baker. Love you, Thunder Rosa. Love everybody there. But the showcase of women on NXT versus AEW is like this.
Yeah.
So there's the other side.
So, Ray, what do you think of is AEW's involvement in this perceived downfall of NXT?
It's huge. It's absolutely huge. Because it's funny and sad in the same breath how many people turned on NXT the second AEW became a thing. Before AEW ever had a show, people were all, and again, I'm not talking about the people who are willing to watch everything and enjoy everything. I'm talking about the people who want to be tribal and say it's only this or that. Mm-hmm. People were only watching NXT because it was the alternative, which may be why Vince didn't like that, right? But it was such an alternative to WWE that people who were disenfranchised, like you said, Queen, with WWE and maybe wrestling in general, were holding on to NXT because that's the best that they got, and they got what they wanted. Just be honest. The indies weren't back then. Maybe still to an extent aren't now, but they are better, easily accessible to a lot of people who want to watch from home, right? If you want to watch wrestling on your television, this was a failure of New Japan for all those years. You can't just go to a regular television show, a television channel, and watch it. You have to go and get the New Japan World, and then that's not the easiest thing to go through, even when you translate it to English, this, that, and the other. So NXT kind of gave you the best of that. When AEW came, people were like, oh, well, I hate Vince anyway, so screw it. I'm going to just watch AEW. And so that killed NXT. And then, now this is completely conjecture. This is 100% of just my thoughts. I told this to Mags in the Head Trauma Mainstay show we did that kind of led to this. But my summation of this is that Vince sat back with kind of Nick Khan in his ear saying, let's look at the financials, and said, well, this is before Nick Khan actually, but this is before that. But when AEW was coming up and he said, I Triple H, I Hunter, I Paul, I've given you
son,
right? I've given you full autonomy on this brand. I have not meddled once. You've hired whoever you wanted. You have full control over who goes up and who comes down.
Mm-hmm.
You're running at a loss. I even agreed to your global localization program where we were going to have a performance center in India. And we're going to have a performance center in either China or Japan, depending on who we could buy. And one in Brazil. And we got the one in London right now. And all of this. I agree with all of this. Now we got somebody coming that wants to steal your steam. They can't compete with me, but they can compete with you since you want to be so different because y'all fighting for the same people. Show me you can beat them. Let's see what happens. And they got their ass beat regularly from a rating perspective.
Weekly.
So then, if you're Vince, again, this isn't Ray talking. This is just thinking from the mindset of Vince, from the mindset of a CEO of a publicly traded company. What would you do?
Yeah.
Vince was probably like, something got to change. And we've talked about this disconnect, where you already have a disconnect where you're not sending me stars, right? And the stars you're sending me aren't ready for the main roster in the way I want them to be. Are they ready in the main roster for the way fans want them to be? Sure. But not the way I want them to be, because they're not going to be used the way I want them to be used. So you're not sending me what I need. You know, the only things you've given me are women, and they only worked with respect because we had to completely revamp our women's division. So like from day one when they revamped it, 4 horsewomen, Paige, now Bianca, even Alexa and Carmella to a lesser extent. Naomi have been there forever, so I'm not including her. But like that, the women worked because they're fantastic.
Yeah,
Asuka's the other one. Thank you. Nia to an extent, even though I know how people feel about Nia. Shayna. But women worked because essentially women are brand new to WWE from in this perspective. Not saying they wouldn't have worked regardless, but we have to acknowledge that there's a big difference in the way they're treated now. But I've done all this. I've given you all this. All this has happened. And you can't beat this company who just started? I don't know, man. Something got to change. And that's just the way I perceived it. Because you can't, there's a drastic difference in the way I assume Vince sees the company since AEW grew. I think NXT television has been fine the entire time, but both of you, Tanner, Queen, have mentioned that y'all feel differently about it since AEW started. And
I feel differently because it's gotten too Raw and SmackDown. I can't with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want that. I don't want it. Yeah. Right. That's my problem.
I don't see that. And maybe that's just my ignorance.
I see it a little bit. And it's starting to sink in for me. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have the same taste, and I don't like it. The lemonade's too sour. It needs to be more sweet. And I don't get that there. So I turned to AEW. Plus, AEW sold me from the beginning because of how much I love Kenny and the Bucks. Like, whatever they do, Hangman, I'm there. Like, let's go. I've been on board since then. Since they killed Adam Cole, and Adam Cole showed up at NXT, right? Which is, man, I wish we could go back to that in some ways. But, like, I don't discount it because NXT does have great stories and good programs. They do. They have good talent. It's not that. It's just feeling way more to me like a SmackDown light and I don't like it. I don't watch. I mean, if I have to, I'd rather watch SmackDown than Raw. Raw, I feel like is a disaster. So like when I sit here and I'm thinking about Nick Khan and I'm thinking about Vince, like to your point, as a business person, like, fuck yeah, I got to do something to fix this.
Yeah.
Because to me, as Vince McMahon and co, this ain't working for me.
Yeah.
However, what are you going to do? Make it like Raw? Because that's working? Nope. So to me, it's just like it. I want NXT just to retract a couple years. Give me like 2018, 2019 NXT.
Yeah. Which is also very interesting. Which is also very interesting because there's a lot of like, when this debate was first opened up by you and Ray Mags, when it was first kind of boiling here, there was a lot of revisionist history going on Twitter where people were like, "Oh yeah, the Ciampa Gargano matches
was the worst take I have ever seen.
Those matches weren't really
carried
great.
NXT, y'all, please.
They didn't really they weren't really meaningful.
Rude.
Like, it's whatever.
For the record, Tanner, I saw people say that in real time, and it's mind-boggling. But I saw people say that in real time.
Yeah, it's very weird. It makes me feel uncomfortable.
And these were, I mean, just to stay on that point for a second, these were quite relevant people in the internet wrestling community who were saying these things. These are not just revisionist fans with 100 followers who are just saying things to be edgy.
Well,
these were quite big people.
Yeah, they quickly lost relevance with me after they said that.
100%. First of all, why are you going back in saying all this stuff that I know they know. Because if they don't know, then something's wrong with you.
Yeah, that just makes
Why
you a liar.
are you putting this? Yes, you're lying. You're straight typing in your little phone or on your keyboard and straight lies, vomiting out of your mouth. What is the point of that? What was the point of saying that?
Yeah.
Why? Clout?
Yeah.
Lots of respect.
100% clout.
Oof.
Yeah.
Please.
Fun times.
So, I mean, we're almost an hour into this now. Let's hit on the main question.
The lessons learned.
Yeah, after going through all of NXT from the beginning to kind of where we are now in this state of flux, Tanner, did NXT fail?
Did NXT fail? Let me answer your question with another question. Did NXT fail at what? NXT definitely had some glories, some major victories. I think that without, if it weren't for AEW, we would still be talking about how awesome NXT was, because that would still be the go-to place for that talent, right? I mean, it's not any stretch of the imagination that when AEW was first getting put to paper, the idea when WWE was trying to negotiate with Kenny, the Young Bucks, and Hangman was going to be in NXT. He was going to be the next big star in NXT. I think that NXT would still continue to be putting on great matches, and honestly, if you want to know my real honest opinion, you would not have NXT on USA Network either. I think that they would still be on WWE Network. There would not be any need for WWE to go to Peacock. I think that NXT would probably, in the end, still be on WWE Network, doing its thing and still existing. I think that they would probably also end up, and again, this is kind of answering a question that maybe Ray had brought up previously, and I think that we've all touched base on it, Ray, Queen, and I. What NXT did really, really well for a very long time was finding that balance and that medium between, hey, these are developmental people who have never even thought about being in a wrestling ring, and here's some people who have actually been in a wrestling ring working on the independents who actually have some semblance of experience. Let's balance that and make sure that we can actually make a great product that people want to watch. And I feel like, again, ultimately that's what it should be, but here we are, and the complete opposite of all of that has happened. So yes, there's things that NXT absolutely did well, areas where I would not consider them a failure, but at its current conjecture, it feels like they really got their head kicked in by AEW, and they certainly aren't any closer to making up ground for it.
Okay, so Ray, same question. I mean, I know we've spoke at length on this subject, but what are your thoughts? Do you think NXT has failed?
Well, I'm not gonna ask a question with a question, but I'm gonna do the same thing Tanner did without doing that. And I'm not gonna say yes and no, but I'm gonna say this: NXT is a multiple meaning entity. So NXT as a third brand, I don't think it failed because it's been successful in the wrestlers that it's created. It's been successful in the stories that it's given. It's been successful in that every time it's had a chance to go on the road, they have sold out. It's successful on the fact that off the backs of their talent, they got a TV network deal. And I understand where you feel, Tanner, but there's reports 2 years before AEW ever existed of them trying to get NXT on television. So they were always going to be on TV. Like, these are verifiable reports, not Meltzer. I'm talking about Variety and people in like television news magazines that are reporting that NXT was going to move to television as far as 2 years before AEW. So like they're successful in that regards. But in terms of developmental, I think I said a definitive no when we recorded, but I'm going to say an incomplete because I had some friends reach out to me and remind me, and I'm a huge proponent of this, but this is just my ignorance in the conversation missing it, is that we ignorantly as a group never seem to recognize the fantastic success that NXT has had with their women. And I don't just mean in NXT, but I mean on the main roster. Because if we're honest, 90 other than Natty and Naomi, maybe I can't think, maybe a couple other people, they're all from NXT. And Naomi came from NXT, the game show, and Natty got reheated in NXT against Charlotte. So like, they're a massive success on that regard, right? The main event, one of the main events, if not the main event, depending on how they book it, of SummerSlam is Sasha versus Bianca. NXT versus literally pulled out of CrossFit to NXT, Bianca. So there is success in that regard. But we're speaking about the men that's very hit or miss, which is why I say incomplete, because they make stars that would not work in Vince's world. And has nothing to do with the person. Has nothing to do with the people. Because I know the ideology is that Vince only likes giants. That's not necessarily true because most of his like major champions who he has built his companies are smaller people. Shawn, Brett, Macho Man, Daniel Bryan, CM Punk, Rollins, Stone Cold 6'1", like Angle, like they're smaller people. So he'll rock with a smaller AJ Styles.
Yeah, I mean, AJ Styles, he said he wished he'd signed him 10 years before.
Yes.
Yeah.
The issue is these guys don't come main roster ready the way Vince wants them. They can't cut promos, right? They are so stuck in their own character that's why he strips them of so much and changes them. I think of a guy who was not even an NXT guy, was a former main roster guy, Bobby Lashley. There's a lot of shit Bobby Lashley had to go through when he came back. But Bobby will tell you, Vince did that to get me out of my comfort zone so I can be prepared for what he gave me. Now, to me and you guys, that sounds like some bullshit. But it's working because this man's main eventing, he main evented WrestleMania, is main eventing SummerSlam as a 6 month world champion against a guy maybe we all hate.
Lose to Goldberg.
But don't shut your mouth. Shut your mouth. But so like the reasonings we may not like, the role we may not like, but for a lot of these guys, the ends are justifying the means. And I don't like it, but it is what it is. And I'd like to see all these guys be successful because I'm NXT through and through. That's my favorite show. Has been for 10 plus years. But until there's a change in the way developmental is being made, sending them to the main roster, that part of it has failed.
So, Queen, same question. Has NXT failed?
I will never say that NXT is a failure for the mere fact that the women's evolution and revolution came from it. Period. Full stop. I don't need to say anything else. Even if they just did that, huge success. Huge. Massive. Also, they made a third brand. That's what they did. However they started, okay. I think people, to your point, Ray, the men have a hit or miss success rate in NXT. But I feel like Daniel Bryan, Seth Rollins, we're going to be on that main roster spot regardless.
Sure.
No matter what.
Sure.
They just have it. They have it, and they specifically have what Vince was looking for. Mm-hmm. And they're both smaller dudes. So there you go. Mm-hmm. But, however, I don't feel like there's a main roster anymore. And I feel like NXT made that possible. It made that a conversation, which is why I do this all the time. Because I actually don't believe going to Raw is the best thing for some people. I just don't. I think it's going to ruin them. Mm-hmm. I don't believe going to SmackDown for some people is the best choice. For other people, great. Awesome. Works for them. But it doesn't work for a lot of the people from NXT. Now, whose fault is that? Well, I think it's the upper companies, right?
Me. Pointing at
me.
Max's fault.
I would never blame that on you. I would never blame the Viking experience on you. Okay? We all know who's responsible for that. That's my thing. They've made it a conversation where it's a lateral move as opposed to an up move. And that's the difference, because when it was created, it's supposed to be an upward movement. Mm-hmm. Now it's a left or right movement. And that's where this conversation gets really tricky, because I don't think it failed. I think it redefined itself over time, and they haven't let go of its inception. Mm-hmm. And that's why it needs a redefinition. You want a third brand because that's how you've been treating it for the past 4 years, then that's what you need to do, right? That developmental, that performance center, that's where you should be building the stars that Vince would like on his Raw or his SmackDown. NXT is its own beast, and it needs to stay that way, I think, because if it becomes more like the other two, you're losing it a little bit. And then it just becomes three of the same things. That's kind of silly. You need to each has to have its own lane, right? Mm-hmm. They need to take the developmental side out of NXT in the way that I'm supposed to build stars for the other two. They need to take that out. NXT is its own thing, and they need to have that performance center option with a very clear understanding of this is what I want for Raw and SmackDown. And then they can even include NXT in that. This is what I want for NXT. And here are the lanes in which this person can go, this one and this one, right? Mm-hmm. If Vince wants people who can do entertaining part of the business, cut the promo, and however he wants to design that story, then that needs to happen in the Performance Center. That's not NXT's job anymore, and I don't think it has been since 2017 at earliest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can I change my answer to hers?
Yeah, that was like the most perfect answer that you could think
really
of.
Good.
That was awesome.
I think my answer is going to actually wrap your three answers all up in a kind of neat little ball. Right now, I don't think NXT failed at all. I think WWE failed NXT.
Yeah.
By changing the goalposts of what they wanted from NXT, by not preparing NXT and the infrastructure to be a competitor with AEW, by not giving NXT that support that the main roster gets. In terms of infrastructure, I think it's not a case of NXT failing; it's a case of WWE failing their third brand. We saw a lot of times. I mean, if you remember last year, we got the whole Survivor Series thing where NXT were brought in as being this huge thing. Triple H and all his team there in the middle of the ring. We are NXT. And then it fell off a cliff. We heard nothing about NXT since then. Every time a wrestler gets called up from NXT or called across, nothing was done with them. There was no kind of a delve into the backstory. We've seen the NXT champion come onto the main roster and lose in minutes. That
Horrifying.
is horrific booking. If you want to make NXT a viable third brand, that's horrible booking. You're making that whole company look weak, and I think it's not a case of NXT failing. I think WWE have changed the goalposts so much over the years of what they wanted from NXT that it was always destined to have this kind of trajectory, that it was always going to be the fall guy for AEW. It was always going to be the red-headed stepchild of WWE programming. I want to end with a little bit of positivity. I want to go around the table and say, how do we fix NXT? So, Ray, I know you will have a hell of a lot to say about this, so I'm going to go to Tanner first. Tanner, how do you fix NXT?
What a swerve.
That's what I do, sir. That's what I do.
How do you fix NXT? I mean, Queen hit the nail on the head. I mean, what else do you want me to say? I mean, she answered that beautifully. Yeah, you basically what you need to do. And if I'm butchering this, Queen, please forgive me.
It's okay.
But you need to make sure that WWE does enough market research, or they say that they do enough market research to know who they're catering to for what, right? They should know by now NXT caters to a different audience than what Raw or SmackDown does. It caters, Raw caters to people who like garbage, and SmackDown caters to people who are fine, right?
Wow.
My man.
Wow.
So
He ain't wrong.
NXT.
Can I change my red shirt real quick? My God.
That's your Texas homie right there.
Yeah, I know.
I'm saying.
Good Texas. Yeah. All right. But yeah, NXT needs to be capable of catering to the audience as a response, like to what it was. I guess I don't want to say what it's originally meant to be, because who knows what that is by now. But yeah, they need to be able to attract the people that Ring of Honor attracts. They need to be able to attract the people that AEW attracts, right? Like you need to be competitive in that sense. You know, I mean, dude, for what, 3 years, people were always talking about, hey, I can't believe that NXT stole the show from WrestleMania, or stole the show from SummerSlam, or stole the show from Survivor Series. I want those days again, because I miss that. How do we get there? Geez, by not you need to keep guys like Adam Cole and Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano around. That needs to at least be one starting point, because if you if you try to diverge them into something that they're not, you run risk of them leaving and going the same direction as Miro and Malachi Black at this point, and showing up in AEW. So you need to retain what's working, and then you need to, again, kind of along the same lines as what Queen said, you need to keep developmental as developmental. You need to, that needs to be separate mentally from what you're producing now as a product on NXT, and try to make, and WWE needs to prop up NXT as being competitive, as not maybe competitive, but like as viable as any other wrestling show that you might find out there that's an alternative.
Ray, your thoughts on fixing NXT?
Well, thank you for not letting me go after Queen, because I just would have nothing else to say.
Yeah, like what was that all about, man?
So thank you for that. Number one. She's gonna shut all of us down. So like, there's no. I usually just went to her and ended the show. I will try, and I'm not joking. Like, you're making me rethink my own damn answers.
Oh damn!
Yeah, like literally changed the show. Yeah.
So I'll say this. Of course, there's a whole bunch of things from a management standpoint. I think, and I've said this on every show I've ever had the pleasure of being on, that I don't think Vince himself is the problem as much as I think that Vince and the kind of the business model and the corporate structure they've built is the problem. And I've never seen a company have from the top to the wrestlers, the people in between, be so horrible and inept and shitty, and they're so bad. And I think that's the failure of WWE. So with that notwithstanding, I'll try to be a little different and say, answer this question with one word: evolve. WWE, and I don't mean evolve in terms of like evolution. WWE bought the IP to the company Evolve from Gabe Sapolsky. So what Queen said in the last segment question you asked, where continue to make NXT a brand and use the Performance Center as what it's supposed to be, and have NXT, SmackDown, and Raw lateral. Let them be different. Let them have their own things that they cater to, and then you use the Evolve IP, put that on the network, and then let the people literally who are coming from the indies, who are you're signing specifically to move up, or Gable, Stevenson, or the people that you're trying to bring in from outside the company, put them on Evolve. Let that be stripped down. Let that be different. And then you have 3 brands and treat them as 3 equal brands. And that way, Gable Stevenson goes straight to SmackDown. Whatever. Such and such goes straight to Raw. Whatever. Such and such goes straight to NXT. Whatever. And that way, your structure is back intact. But whatever you do, have a damn structure. Stop flying by the seat of your pants because it's not working.
Does that not kind of start the ball rolling again, though? Because when Evolve becomes a big thing and fans are really kind of jumping on the Evolve bandwagon, is Vince going to see those dollar signs in his eyes and think, I need to get this out on the road? This is some good shit, pal.
No, it won't, because Vince never wanted them to get on the road for NXT. That was never a Vince move. That was all Triple H. Triple H didn't put them on the road. Vince didn't say, hey, man, we should make some money off of this. The only reason they got Brooklyn TakeOver was because they already had the damn arena booked for 4 days. And so Triple H was like, well, since we got it, can we do this? Right? If you remember, the rival that had Zayn versus Cesaro and the ladder match between Neville and Bo Dallas for the NXT title, that was the first ever show on the WWE Network. The only reason Triple H got that possible was because they needed to test a major show before WrestleMania, because the network started the night after Elimination Chamber, and they needed one show to test to make sure the network worked. So because of that, Triple H had some leverage to say, let's get a show. Other than that, they may not even got a damn takeover. It worked, so he was able to leverage, well, you know what, let's keep takeovers on Wednesdays. We're going to keep it on the same night we're already on, just give us an extra 2 hours. You need network content anyway, right? So none of this stuff is because Vince said, I want money, I see dollars. Vince never even looked down to Winter Park, Florida, once. The show that they had, the WrestleMania 31 was in San Jose, right? The Silicon Valley, whatever.
Yeah. Yes.
They had a special show that they had in San Jose that wasn't taped, just for fans, and it was like NXT, a takeover show, but it wasn't for fans. That was the first time Vince had ever seen NXT live. That was the first time he had ever seen.
What the fuck is this shit, pal?
Exactly, because that's the night Hideo,
so small.
He hit the GTS on Austin Aries, and the crowd lost their shit because, oh my God, CM Punk, whatever, right? But Vince had never seen it live before then. So if, as long as it's understood, this is the goal of the show, and Triple H doesn't get trigger happy and says, well, I could keep doing this, and this because you're letting me. As long as this is the plan, and I'm not dissing Triple H at all. I would do the same thing in his situation. But as long as that's the plan and the goal and the understanding of what it is, it won't be a problem. Queen broke it down perfectly, and Tanner even did himself. We never understood what NXT was because it kept changing. If Evolve is only and forever will only ever be a conduit to the main roster, and NXT is considered main roster, we'll never have a problem.
Yeah, you make some absolutely salient points. Queen, round up this question. How do you fix NXT and put all us in our place?
Everything else that I said, we already know because everybody talked about it again, right? So on top of all that, You have to take NXT seriously. Don't have your champion come on your other brand and lose in 90 seconds. Sorry. Wrong move. That makes me not care about NXT and think that your champion is trash. Period. So that it needs to be respected. You need to make it your third brand. Officially. Embraced by the aboves. That's going to make a huge difference. Keeping each in their own lane, using that developmental as only developmental is a big deal. Also, they need to take a step back. They're always looking for what's next and what I need to do. Cool. What about what's happening right now? Because right now I'm seeing a lot of trash. I don't like it. Let's fix that. How do we fix that? What are the things that we need to do? Well, I think we need to go back to fundamentals. Every time something isn't working, we got to take it back to basics of what people like. What are the things that make me money? What are the things that people enjoy? Who in my demo is watching NXT? What is it they want to see? Let's give them that. I guarantee you that'll fix and help your ratings from here, at least to up here, right? You have your own night now. You moved. Great move. So now you got Tuesdays. What are you going to do? Make me take NXT seriously. If I'm a casual other fan of the other two brands, make me take it seriously. Because if they do, other people will. Stop seeing it as under here. That's the fundamental problem. Majority of folks that watch WWE still see NXT is here and Raw and SmackDown is here. That's wrong. Wrong. They haven't been treating it like that on their Wednesday, now Tuesday nights. So let's fix that and make it this way. Nice and across. That's going to be so helpful for the talent that's there. They make good stories. Let them be showcased. Put a little more emphasis and money into that. Back the horse that gives you that feeling of those takeovers. Having been to several myself, been very lucky to actually see those live. I was there the last one before Aleister Black and Ricochet and the War Raiders were to the other brands. That feeling only NXT has. I've been to AEW, I've been to Raw, I've been to SmackDown, I've been to pay-per-views. Only NXT has that. AEW feels completely different. NXT has something very, very special. They have to lean into that. And I think if they took the voices of their fans a little more seriously and understood who it is, right? You brought out that who's watching NXT. That's going to help big time. Also, Karrion Kross needs to go as champion.
Can we
Scarlett, can she have the belt? Can she be NXT champion? Because
can we also say, can they tour? Can they get out of the same place every damn week? Maybe that'll help.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yes, it would.
That'd be great.
And this conversation has been great. This debate has been great. Some really, really cool ideas and thoughts and viewpoints. I've thoroughly enjoyed my time talking with you guys, as I always do. I want to leave on a positive note, and I've got to give props to everyone in the chat. Sorry for not really getting to your comments, but the conversations in the chat were just absolutely on point. I really appreciate you all. But as we go around the table and give our socials, what I'd also like from each of you is a little bit of positivity. So I want an NXT match that people should go out and look for and watch. So to give you a little bit of thinking time, I'll go through mine first. You can follow me down here at Podfather Schmags on the Twitter. I am, in terms of content, I am all over the place on Radio Tekkers, a part of the amazing team over at Visionaries Global Media, and with my boy Ray over on Chairshot, doing some really cool, interesting things over there. So definitely go and check out all those teams. And for my match, one that I go back to on the regular, it's the inaugural North American Championship six-man ladder match. That really just shouts out to me, this is what NXT is all about. So definitely go and if you have the time, go and check out that match. It's an absolute banger. Tanner, sir, for the third time today, give us your socials.
Yeah, I mean, you can follow me on Twitter at TexasGentleman_, which is right across here, right here at the bottom. That's my personal. Or you can just hit us up on Twitter at the Radio Tekkers Twitter handle, RadioTekkers. We cover, obviously, football, as well as wrestling and MMA. So it's a great time to be subscribing to Radio Tekkers. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and smash that subscribe button. We greatly appreciate it. And yeah, while you're watching NXT TakeOver New Orleans for that 6-man ladder match, you might as well stick around for the main event and watch a really good wrestling match, Tommaso Ciampa versus Johnny Gargano, no holds barred, because the haters are wrong.
Oh, that match is it is something else.
Ciampa has the greatest entrance music in history in that match. Just the boos of the
silence so and booing,
just drinking those salty tears.
So visceral. It's amazing.
Ray, my brother from another mother, let us know where we can get hold of you.
Am I doing this right?
Yeah.
Yay!
Hey.
You
got
it first try, man.
Hey, man, look. I pointed at Queen earlier and I did this, and I was like, that's not the right hand. I'm at It's Ray Cash, RAY as in Mysterio, CASH as in dollars. So follow your boy there. I'm trying to do better to tweet, but most of the time it's just retweets and likes, but I'm trying to do better. As far as a match that I could give you guys, I am very much a story guy. Like, the wrestling part is cool, but I gotta have a story. One of the best stories ever told is who jumped Aleister Black. And Aleister Black versus Johnny Gargano. Johnny Gargano was absolved of his sins. Go watch that match. TakeOver Phoenix, was it?
Yeah, I think so.
I'll check.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
And Mom, Queenie, thank you so much for taking the time to give us your knowledge. Let everyone know about the things coming up in Queen's content creation world and where we can get hold of you on your socials.
Well, firstly, thank you so much for asking me to come on. It's been so much fun chatting with you guys today. Y'all can find me at the Queen of NE on the old Twitters. I live tweet a lot and talk a lot of shit. That's pretty much what I do. As far as content creation wise, I'm back, sort of. I think.
Are you?
I am. I guess. Not in the Queen's Court way, but in the Queen and Pops Experience way. We just dropped our season 2 Back at It episode today, in which we rewatched Sasha versus Bianca from WrestleMania 37 because all the feels. And next week we have a fun match in store, which I'll tell you now is Walter versus Dragunov from NXT UK to prepare us for NXT TakeOver. So Pops and I talk about that, and we drop some news about a new show, something like that. I don't know. I don't know. I would stay tuned to that. And as for a match in NXT, can it be anything other than Sasha Bailey at Brooklyn? The answer is no. So that's the one. And also for new NXT happening now, anything with Kushida and anything Kushida does, you should watch.
Oh, I stand Kushida.
Yeah.
Me too.
You know what? If I may, go watch TakeOver. You know what? Whatever. Okay.
Thank you.
Go watch TakeOver 36 this weekend.
Yes,
how about
absolutely.
That? Or next weekend.
Damn it.
This coming weekend, we got you.
I'm trying. Okay.
And I will be on with. I'll be on with Josh Robinson on his Twitch stream to predict that show. So yeah, definitely keep tuned for that. Definitely drop a like and a subscribe here at Radio Tekkers. We are hoping to be your go-to for alternative commentary, sport, and also specials like this. So yeah, thank you all for watching along. Thank you to my illustrious panel, and we will see you all very, very soon. Bye-bye.
Queen for president.
President, CEO, all of it.
NXT.
I'll take over.
Can you fix the pandemic too?
Oh,
yeah.
Sure. Do it all.
We out.